What we'll be doing as part of our lab work today is solving equations using a formula. And I want you to copy these down item by item as a model of how to do them in your homework log that I'll be checking a little later in the lab period. The examples we'll be working on today are from something I mentioned before, but just as a review. If you go to your Blackboard page, over to where it says Course Content, click on that. Now, these are the links that come up first for our mini lecture, and these are more detailed than what I did the other day, and you can pick out the one you'd like to review. These are review for the practice tests that are in our booklet, in some of the booklets, but just by watching them you can get a good challenge of what a test might be like if it were in paper. And the one for chapter 2 is in 2 parts actually. And then these are the review items for the homework, basically chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that I've taken each homework question and gone over the theory to arrive at the answer. And then these are the additional exercises. And the one we're going to look at today is 2.5. And if you'd like to print out any of these, down at the bottom of course content, there they are as PDF files. You can just take one of them. And also this is the place where the mini lecture booklet is as a PDF file, and you could print that out if you have lost or misplaced yours. So let's go to 2.5. And this is the video I did of that. Now it runs about 16 minutes. And I go over all of them. So we're going to take some of the examples right from here. We're going to start off with something we'll be doing in chapter 3, which is the slope formula. And we have the value for m as 1/3. The value for y sub 1 right there as 3, y sub 1 right there I should say. X sub 2 is 7 right there, and then in the formula there's a negative, but x sub 1 itself is a -2. So we'll give you a moment and we'll circulate to see if you can substitute this into this formula. So you should have something like this, where m is 1/3. We don't know what y sub 2 is. That's what we want to find. We have x sub 1 is a 3. Now keep in mind there's a negative in the formula. And then x sub 2 is 7. A negative is in the formula. And x sub 1 itself is a -2. So I would strongly suggest that you would have put that in a parenthesis there, because now we have the 2 negatives. So the opposite of a negative would make this positive. Okay. Now, when you run into something like this, the opposite of a negative, you can just make it a positive. But again, you want to know what's going on. Now, a special way of multiplying something like this is that we can do what is called cross multiplication. That is, when you have a fraction equal to, in a sense, a fraction, we can cross multiply this way. So we can simplify this a little bit too. 7 plus 2 is going to end up as a 9. So I'll do that. So let's cross multiply this together. 1 times 9 will be 9. Now 3 times y sub 2 is 3 y sub 2, and 3 times a negative 3, because this is in parentheses by this division bar, will be a negative 9. So just cross multiplying. Now we want to isolate the y, so we'll transpose the negative 9 to the other side, or add 9 there, add 9 there. This gives us 18. And how do I get y sub 2 by itself? Well, you may recall we said in lecture, you divide by the numerical coefficient, and we get y sub 2 is 6. So we use the formula, and then through substitution we found a missing letter. All right, that's our first example. We could label this one number 2, our second example. This is a capital S equals this, and we want to solve for the letter L. So we'll give you a moment to write this down. Now again, in solving for a particular letter, we want to isolate that letter on one side and then everything else on the other side. So I need to, in a sense, get rid of this, and I'm going to do so by transposing it. That is, just bring it to the other side and change its sign. So we have a capital S now, minus 2HW. We want to isolate the L in this term, so we want to get rid of this term by transposing it to the other side. So we now have this. Now we want to solve for the letter L. These are all factors, 4 times L times W. How do I isolate the L? Well, as we would with coefficients, we're going to divide out what we don't want. We're going to divide it by 4W. If we do it to this side, we must do it to this side. Now, we cancel out the 4's, cancel out the W's. These become 1's, so we're just left with the L on this side. L equals this. In our last example, we'll give you a moment to write it down. We want to solve for the letter Y. And you might say, well, wait a minute, Y is in 2 terms. So again, recalling what we said from chapter 1, when you have a variable in 2 terms, or something in 2 terms as a factor, this is A times Y plus B times Y. How can we get the Y's out of there? And we said we do so by factoring it out. We're going to take the Y out of each term, and we're left with an A plus B, and that equals C. Now remember, we had the distribution principle. To get that, So we can reverse it. So these were two individual terms now. Now this is just one term as a product, where we've multiplied. Now, it's this times this. So how do I get rid of the AB? Well, I divide it out. I'm going to divide this by A plus B on this side, and A plus B on this side. I didn't need parentheses here, but it's a good idea since we're now going to cancel this with this. Anything divided by itself is 1 except 0. So we then get for an answer y equals C over A plus B. Okay, on to your regular work, and I'll be around to check your homework logs.